So I'm honestly very honored to be presenting here today, and I'd like to give a big shout out to the organizers for making this event happen. I think it's amazing, and it's just such a great opportunity for us to connect as a UX community, and it's really important, especially at this time. So today I'd like to talk about the visibility of UX and share a case study from black market of research to business visionaries. Essentially, this is about my experience of bringing UX into organization and helping the business understand the value of design. There were some ups and downs in this journey and lessons learned that I'd like to share with you today. My talk is actually about the same challenges that were mentioned by the previous speaker, but I'm going to look at it from a slightly different angle. Okay, so how did it start? Some time ago, I was tasked to build a UX research practice within one of the smaller New Zealand banks. They were going through their digital transformation and wanted to ensure the best possible experience for their customers. I was very enthusiastic about this challenge. I knew exactly what to do and how to do it because it wasn't my first time. I had to hire a team, set up processes, upskill and educate everybody around me, and generally get everyone excited about the new initiative. Once the team was in place, we started doing some user testing, first as a trial. Then, after showcasing the first research results, we got more and more people on board. The goal was to spread awareness among the digital team and show the value of research by doing it and providing fast and actionable insights. It was crucial for us to keep the momentum going because the company was moving at a very fast pace. So did us. After about 6 months, we looked back and realized that we actually did a good job. We conducted about 50 user sessions, including guerrilla testing, user interviews with friends and family, and external customers. We also supported 3 major product launches, including by running some quick testing prior to the development phase. And it helped us to identify some major problems with the product that were fixed prior it went live. And generally, all the stakeholders seemed to like us. They provided some really good feedback, and we felt like we were getting more and more visible, at least within the digital team. So we started thinking about how we take our UX practice to the next level. Since we didn't have enough resource, we would still do mainly quick and dirty research in order to show that research can be quick and agile and won't slow the delivery down. So we would need to build and document processes, make sure we use the right tools, get more resources to support our fast pace, and continue to spread the awareness throughout the company, within the wider business, and especially at the executive level. However, when we got a chance to share a piece of research with the executive team, we got a strong pushback. It turned out that the feedback that we shared was not in line with the company's strategy. On top of that, the methodology used was not seen as credible enough. We mainly relied on qualitative research, but unfortunately, it's not something that works well at the executive level. We lost our credibility almost immediately. We must have got our wires crossed somewhere, but all of a sudden, the narrative in the company changed completely. From, hey, let's do some user research, to users don't know what they want, we shouldn't be asking them what to do. And unfortunately, this narrative spread really quickly, especially among the key decision makers. That's where the black market of research emerged. We got to a point where it didn't even feel normal anymore to talk about research or use it as an argument in conversations. But funnily enough, we couldn't stop our operation because there was still a stable demand coming from our allies that we gained earlier. At the same time, there was still this pushback from the business, and we even had some quiet supporters who were still on the fence, and they would go, yeah, I really appreciate your suggestion. I think we should be testing this out, but maybe not this time, maybe a bit later. So we almost had to go underground and provide our services under the table. How absurd is that? So black market of research is a metaphor for me now that illustrates how things can go wrong, even if you had the very best intentions at the start. And there was clearly a moment when I felt like, well, this is the lowest point in my career. This is a total disaster, but it taught me some good lessons. So when I pulled myself together, I started talking to some people in the business and finally realized what went wrong. So the business thought that we were too fixated on digital and didn't have enough knowledge about their domain. We didn't display enough curiosity about what they do and how they do it. Therefore, there was no confidence in our recommendations. Secondly, they thought that we were ignoring the existing data. We were strongly advocating for getting feedback from external customers, but the business believed we could have leveraged our frontline people, sales, and subject matter experts from different business units who've been with the company for years. And finally, it felt like we were forcing this change. We were moving too fast, and we had thought if the company was fast-paced, they would adopt new things quickly, but it wasn't the case. Apparently, if you want to boost the design maturity level in your organization, you have to deal with the change of mindsets, and it doesn't usually happen overnight. So what was our contingency plan? Strategy number 1, let's talk business. Well, if they didn't think we knew much about the domain, it was very easy to fix. We organized a series of meetings with subject matter experts from different business units so they could talk us through the major customer flows, process maps, and systems so we could understand the inside out of the business. Strategy 2, leverage the existing data. So we decided to direct our efforts at the frontline staff and literally spend days sitting at the contact center and listening to the calls. Based on the observations and insights collected, we built a giant customer journey map that actually revealed a few serious gaps. And when we suggested to fix those issues, it was a very easy sell because the impact would be very easy to quantify as it had to do with the number of calls and the workload of our contact center. Another strategy was to find a way how to blend qualitative and quantitative data. As you remember, our business wasn't ready to embrace qualitative research. So we tried to find a forum where we could incorporate qualitative insights into quantitative data. At the time, the company decided to start measuring conversion rates and build funnels for all their major flows. There would be a monthly meeting with marketing, data people, and we got invited as well. Despite we will only be given maybe 5 minutes at the end of each session, the insights that we would share would spark some really good conversations and even actions that people were happy to commit to. And it was a step forward for us because little by little, we started being more involved in the actual day-to-day struggles of the business. And the last strategy was simply to respond to any business challenges that would come up, which is simply about putting your hand up when the help is needed. Sometimes it was something that we were not confident about at all and thought it was beyond our responsibilities. For example, one of the delivery teams was struggling with their backlog and planning. They had 2 product owners who were failing to find consensus. We volunteered to facilitate their planning sessions. We thought, if we can run workshops, we can run anything, right? So we started facilitating those sessions. We added some human touch in the way we ran it. And guess what? One of the major UX enhancements got prioritized and implemented later. It was one of the biggest wins indeed. Another request came from a struggling business owner whose department was understaffed. They went down from a team of 27 to 11 and had to urgently adjust their processes in order to operate efficiently. One of my team members who got assigned to this project wasn't confident enough because there was not enough knowledge. We thought that there would be maybe some other people who would know better. But with the help of design thinking, the solution was found. And as a result, the business owner was thrilled. Later, when I was getting feedback from him, he said, "I'd love to have people like you at the table." And this phrase meant the world to me on that day. And by the way, he was one of the people who were initially skeptical about research. But magically, after this project, we started getting more and more requests to conduct actual research for his team. So when I was looking back, I was trying to understand whether we were doing something differently this time. Yes, we were doing less research, more of other activities, but something was also different about our attitude. When our team was established originally, we felt like UX ninjas, like UX heroes who would bring the light into the darkness of this cold and revenue-driven business. And it's not that the business didn't want us to bring the change or be customer-oriented, quite the opposite. But they also wanted us to be empathetic and care not just about customers, but about their problems as well. So we had to adjust our mindset from UX heroes to someone like UX servants. Someone who's always there and is ready to give a hand when needed. Someone who understands the situation and is ready to adjust to achieve better results together. So each of you can decide whether this story has a happy ending, but this experience was extremely valuable for me. It was a crash course of UX leadership, business thinking, and that sometimes you need to backtrack in order to make a difference and increase the visibility of UX. So how do you become a business visionary? Or how to get a seat at the big table? I've pulled together some key points based on my experience that I'd like to share with you now. And I also spoke with a few industry experts, people who lead design and digital teams, to see if they have the same struggles and how they cope with them. So here are my tips and tricks. So first of all, business empathy. Empathy is a must-have skill for any designer or UXer. However, I noticed that we don't always apply this skill when communicating with stakeholders. We often put ourselves in the shoes of our customers. And to be honest, it's fairly easy because we all have bank accounts, we all are shoppers, we use the internet. But when was the last time you thought of the situation from the CEO perspective or from a business unit manager who has 70 people under them? Empathy implies speaking common language. So try to avoid using design jargon and take the time to explain the frameworks that became a second nature to us, to other people. Empathy is about being humble. Once I had an informal chat with one of my stakeholders, and she said, when the company started hiring all of these fancy people like UX researchers, I felt a little bit insecure. I felt like an imposter. I didn't know what UX researchers do. They're probably really smart. And I was really surprised to find out that you guys are normal people, really cool guys, actually. And it was quite eye-opening for me. At the time, I also noticed that one of my team members mentioned that, when trying to support their point, they mentioned how many years they've been in the industry. And I decided to call it out because when you talk about, how experienced you are, it might be intimidating to other people, especially in the business. So I think that empathy is the most important thing. And even if you fail in other areas, it's something that will always get you back on track. Another one is listen and learn. It's interesting because when companies hire UX practitioners, they always expect them to educate people around them. And the education piece is crucial indeed. But make sure that before you start educating, you assess the situation really thoroughly. A quick analysis of the current design maturity level is always a good start. If the organization is mature enough, find out what is expected from you to maintain that level, or maybe take it to the next level. If the organization is immature, you'll probably will be dealing with changing the mindsets. And honestly, it's the hardest thing. So take it with caution and be patient. And a quick note for leaders, when hiring or onboarding new people, make sure you set the expectations correctly from the start and then give them enough time to learn about the business during their first month. And I'm sure it will pay off in the future. Be flexible. One of the most common traps is our own experience. Sometimes we think that what worked in one company might work in another, but it's not always the case, especially when it comes to bringing a change. There is no one size fits all. And as any designer, when you're given a challenge, you wouldn't jump in a solution first, right? You would need to assess the problem. So the same, if you were hired to do X, you can take your time to understand what is the problem and how you can solve it better. Be prepared to adjust, especially if you work for a product company. And just in general, remember to be open-minded, as that's what we always encourage everybody else to do, and we should be the best role models for that. Build alliances. Again, this point would come naturally if you make sure there is empathy in place, if you're listening to others and you're flexible. But also, building alliances is not just about being a nice person. In business, sometimes you're usually expected to give something first in order to gain a certain level of trust. So, for example, one time my product owner asked me to run a stand-up for them while they were away. And I could have said, sorry, can you please ask somebody else? I'm too busy. But I knew that it was about trust. And I really wanted to show that I value that trust. So I said yes. Embrace business constraints. When it comes to design and business, they are sometimes seen as almost two parallel lines. And I don't think we should treat business as an enemy. Any business needs to generate revenue. This is given. But what can make our life easier is thinking about it from a different perspective. In creative thinking, they say that constraints actually help us to come up with more creative solutions. So instead of blaming business of being revenue-driven only, let's just practice creative thinking and solve problems. And finally, measure the value of design. This is the last point in my classification, but it's not just because it's not important. It's just because I don't think I have mastered it yet. Honestly, I find it extremely hard to quantify most of the design decisions that we make in our day-to-day. One time, I calculated the number of developer hours spent on fixing minor usability issues that could have been detected if we conducted research up front. This information was taken to one of the executives, but there was zero reaction, literally. This person just didn't believe in the value of design, so nothing could make them change their mind. Apparently, not everything in business is about money. Sometimes you just have to believe. So I'd only like to share a piece of advice that I got from one of my experts. When trying to measure the business value of design, try not only to focus on revenue. There are different types of value we should be looking at. Customer satisfaction, NPS, completion rate, etc. Personally, I'm a huge believer that design has a great impact on revenues. But unfortunately, not every company has the tools and talent to measure it properly. And one final thought that I'd like to leave you with. Let's use the power of empathy to elevate our design influence. I believe that everyone can start practicing empathy, regardless if you're a leader or an individual contributor. And ultimately, I'm sure it will help to make the UX in your company more visible. Thank you, everyone.